very much. My name is Imal Silva. I am an artist, a multidisciplinary artist with a very strong bent for abstraction. And then I basically study different subjects and themes and come up with different bodies of work. So Afrocentric architecture generally, then Afrocentric architecture is one of those bodies of work. So that's why I'm here today.
Okay, my name is Nmadili Okumabwa. I'm an urban planner, an educator, the founder of CPDI Africa, which is the Community Planning and Design Initiative Africa. Our mission is to fast track the evolution of African-centered architecture from the continent all the way through the diaspora. And we do that with a lot of events, workshops, excursions, competitions here in Nigeria and in the US.
Okay, thank you. So let me start with the second half of the question. I actually, from the time I was a kid, I've always been fascinated by design, including built spaces. And I guess, it's something that is just within me. It's just natural to me. But this particular body of work I was looking to connect deeper. I had finished an exhibition on environmental sustainability last year at the Turkish Embassy, and I am planning for one on social sustainability. And I was asking myself, what could connect these two exhibitions? And I realized that built spaces have the component of the environment and then the component of the human beings that live in them. So I felt that was something I could do in between while I was waiting for the final words for upcoming exhibition. So that's how it all started and got me more and more interested in built spaces, began to research, and then began to bring context into where I have lived and where I have functioned all my life, so yeah, thank you.
All right. Those who hold the vision of what our communities could look like, back from the past all the way to the present, now into the future, it's always been the creatives, the artists. They are the first ones to give our spaces identity. Artists working as architects as well take things to another level. But how do we truly guide the way our cities are designed, how they grow, how they evolve? That becomes the role of the policymakers. So artists working with architects, working with policymakers to shape the way we're going, how we evolve, becomes very important. So how do we navigate that conversation? How do we combine all three? That is what we're trying to work on today. And the work that we're seeing that Imal Silva is doing, I think, in my opinion, really brings those three together. Yes.
Well, thanks to CPDI, where I went to take a course on Afrocentric architecture. Like I said, I initially started from a macro perspective, from a more global, universal perspective. But then again, if you're looking at a subject, you must personalize it and you must find out how it affects you as a person and your immediate community. So going for that course in the preparation for this exhibition made me realize the place of culture, the place of spirituality, the place of material, the place of community, the place of aesthetics in architecture. So these are all elements, and that we need to consider when we're designing a space. These things are considered in contemporary times, but they were also considered in previous times. But have we lost out on the body of knowledge that people earlier in these climes had? And are we just doing something that everybody is doing everywhere right now? In the process, are we losing out on something? So basically Afrocentric architecture would have to be about designing for Africa by Africa. And again, I will also add something, because we live in the tropics and we live in a particular belt globally. I believe that there are so many important truths that are embedded here that can have universal value and implications. So it's not just for Africans alone, this body of knowledge. It can also be made available to those outside Africa.
Okay. Again, the importance of working with the artists, right? So, I'm a planner, and most people know CPD Africa as a work of architects. But when CPDI was launching back in 2014, we actually took the concept, the idea to the art community to have them, first of all, create that aesthetic. Because, you know, the aesthetics is very important. It's the first thing you see when you see something. So if the artist could get that aesthetic language perfect, then the architects could now take that and make architecture from it. And so we eventually moved on with the architects. However, now that we have these prototypes that have come in from those who studied architecture in school, we want to now take these languages now back to the art community for them to give us their take on that language or these languages. Because these Afrocentric designs is not really African architecture. The designs are actually coming from each ethnic group. So what's House architecture, what's Shekiri architecture, what's Yoruba, Igbo, all right? So we take these design philosophies, come up with these modern prototypes by architects, and then now let's see what the artists would do. Take creative license to express these forms in more aesthetic languages. So what we're seeing in the exhibition now is exactly that. It's an artist's take on the built environment and coming from that African lens, that Afrocentric lens. Those that are purely abstract, all the ones of those that are influenced by the master builder himself, Dimas Wonko, seeing an artist's take on an artist's take as well, because Dimas is also an artist. He's a master builder, architect, artist, creative. So seeing Imal's take on Dimas Wonko's architecture was truly incredible, and the depth, his introspective take on those design philosophies, like he talked about, what we talk about at CPD Africa: culture, aesthetics, spirituality, materials, and of course the engagement of the community.
Okay, so interesting. So I would use Papa Demas Nwoko as a reference again. I don't think I'll be this influenced to look at indigenous forms of architecture if I was not privileged to have lived in Ibadan and have spent time inside his buildings. I used to go there. I had an interest in design, I had an interest in art, but I had a physical contact with these structures. These are finished structures. They're not, it's not that somebody had an idea and they just put some sticks and stones together. No. Entire amphitheaters built with brick made from earth. So I would sit there and I would ask myself, there's value here. Why is it that people are not looking at these things, from a deeper perspective? So it's important for us to go back to where work had been done. That's why I keep emphasizing this continuity. I know when we were doing the workshop, you were telling us how you were having competitions on Yoruba architecture now, not just Afrocentric. Tiv, different tribes, to be able to extract knowledge from these different people within the country itself. So first and foremost is to have preferences and roots, and we need to put one leg in history. And doing that, I grew up in Yoruba land, so I've been influenced by the Yoruba culture more than any other culture. So if I was to design something, there will always be, if I was to design something that way, there will always be that bent. It's the way I see, because that's how I was conditioned. So the future would mean to go back to the past, look at where we are, and then plan for the future, which means that even if it means for us to train AI or train technology to help us design based on the way we see. AI is not seeing, it's only telling you how everybody is seeing, it's just trying to do its best. It's not a human being, so it's limited. But there's a conditioning we have had. That's why I brought the component of spirituality. How do you explain the emotions you get when you go back to your home? You can't tell me that something that elicits those emotions don't have a spiritual quality. So AI doesn't have that spiritual quality. It can never have spiritual quality. So there's a component, that's where the artist, as an artist, I'm speaking that we need to be very, very intentional going forward. We have technology it is a fantastic advantage. Because we have technology, we have access to data, we have access to tools, but then we must always go back and ask ourselves, how do we make it ours? And then if we are able to do this, then we can talk with those in power, those in governance, and say, okay, this is what has been done, this is where we're coming from, this is where we are, this is where we want to get to. And we believe that, most importantly, and these are my closing words, you bring unique selling points. The fact that why is Nigerian music, for example, what it is globally? If they were singing what somebody else was singing, it wouldn't be so popular. Because you're giving the people outside a whole new perspective to music, or the Nigerian bent to music. That's what makes it unique. So the uniqueness in it is actually being able to go into what is local and then make it global. So policymakers need to understand that we take what is local, we make it globally acceptable, standardized, whatever, you will be able to answer to that better. And then commercially too, why would somebody come and look for a resort in Africa or in Nigeria that is Africa? Why would the Oingo people come? Why would foreigners come? Because they want to experience Africa. So African architecture is also an experience. And that's how we need to see it.
Good one. Okay, so standing on existing protocol, everything you just said. So I would take it, a step further and say all these things should be mandated. I would go hardcore. The policymakers have to take these initiatives seriously, because it would actually help them. I think our policymakers, our leaders, if they really do want better, stronger nations, then they will do things, or they'll put things into policy that really do help the people, the community. When it comes to art, architecture, and policy making, like I said, the artists visualize, the architects can manifest, but the policymakers have to make sure that these recommendations coming from the built environment professionals actually get done. They're taken seriously. So the two examples I will give, I like to give them the folks in Ethiopia. Ethiopia says that they're the one nation that was never colonized. So they're kind of forward-thinking. Definitely, they're forward-thinking. A lot of the Ethiopian architects and students were interfacing with CPDI when we started out in 2014, and I found out that their government had mandated that for heritage preservation to thrive, any architect who is submitting plans to their development control for approval for building permits, if that design did not reflect any of their identity, whether it's the materials, sustainable materials, whether it's the aesthetics, whether it's the cultural or spiritual elements, if they could not find any of those elements in that design, no building approval for you. Yeah. So they were intentional about it. So of course you go to Ethiopia and you see architecture that's actually still speaking their language. The other example I want to give is coming out of Morocco, sorry. And the site supervisors are always the local master builder, the people who have not gone to school. They're the traditional builders. The trained architects answer to them. So when you come to site with your modern, ultra-American, ultra-British design, it's not going to get built. They also going to tell you, we don't see the heritage preservation here, which is why when you go to Morocco, you can tell driving around a built environment that those buildings are modern Moroccan or modern African. The colors, the materials, the courtyards, the spirituality, the aesthetics, it is their own, right? So you are mixing the local cultural master builder knowledge with those who've gone through the Western education, right? But that's policy. So the policymakers, they play a very important role in us shaping our continent. They say Africa is rising. Okay, fine. Africa has to be rebuilt, not built, because she was built before. Africa needs to be rebuilt. In whose image will we build her? It should be in our own. It cannot be in a fake version of the West.
Interesting question. We have an urban planner here. She's most qualified to answer this, but I will speak from the perspective of an artist. The first thing it is not is an AI version that you get off a phone. Nothing against AI, it's fantastic. But if you say the future, it's much more than that. Why do I say that? It's not even just about the aesthetics, just copying and pasting. Every country, every people, every culture is different, right? All over the world. There's a way an Igbo person looks at something and interprets it. There's a way a Yoruba person will look at the same thing and interpret it. That's why a Yoruba song that is a global hit is different from one song by an Igbo musician. That's why a fashion design done by somebody in the East is different from one done by somebody in the North. There's a difference in seeing. The way you look, the way you see things is different. And that is the first thing I want to say. So having said that, if you don't, that is where the artist comes in. Because if you're connected to the culture of where you live or where you lived, there's a way you subconsciously understand how we see things, how we perceive things. So these are the deeper understand. So even if you say you want to design a city for the future, it can't just be, let AI design something for us. No. We need to see city where. Is it in Igbo land? Is it in Tiv land? Is it in Kano? Where? And if that's the case, how are we going to see it from the eyes of the people that live in that place, who have seen they have seen their culture in a particular way, they've seen their materials in a particular way, they've seen their community in a different way, they've looked at their spirituality in a different way. So at the end of the day, that city you want to design should be a continuum. It cannot be that. It's not something you plunk from outside. It's not something you just come and drop. It's a continuum, it's a continuity. And the heart of this is the spirituality. Yes, the aesthetics shows it, the materiality, yes, but it's much deeper. That's what I want to say. Designing a city there's urban morphology. By the time we start going deeper into that, you will be able to break it down for us. So I would say that it takes much more. I'm defining more of what it is not than what it is. It is not just cut and paste. It's not just asking AI to design the future of African cities, because the AI itself was designed by different people from all over the world, so it was fed with information of their own perspective of Africa. So how do you expect it to interpret what it is supposed to be totally for the Africans? So let me not go beyond that. Thank you.
All right, lovely answer. So I'll build upon that, but I'll take us all the way back to the past. I always talk about Kemet. We know it as Egypt. City planning that was done by those ancestors 10,000 years ago. What were they thinking of to design the Egypt that we know today? What was a grand empire, grand nation, grand world superpower back in its time? What is the relationship between people, their leaders, community members, how people operate in their different spaces, their relationship between life and the afterlife? You can imagine why pharaohs would have pyramids, those structures built in that way, something that we still don't understand what they were thinking today. But the philosophy of the people was embedded in their urban planning, it was embedded in their architecture. It gave them their identity. It truly was. They say that the highest form of a society's evolution is the sign of the advancement of their architecture or the urban planning. All right. So if people were to come to the cities of Africa today or African diaspora cities today, what would they see? What would our communities tell them about us? Would they think that we were highly evolved based on what they are seeing? Or would they think that we are struggling or poor or primitive, right? So the advancement of our cultures should be reflected. I always say that the pyramids were not supposed to be the highest of Africa's evolution or civilization. That was just the beginning, 10,000 years ago. What should our cities look like today? We should have advanced much further with amazing science and technology and urban planning practices. So yes, we should be able to drive through the spaces of Zululand or Ashantiland and just look out the window and be marveled by what those cultures have produced, right? How they've laid out their cities. Are the temples, the shrines, the palaces, the markets, are they in the center of town and people live around, radiate in circles? Or are the people in the middle and the military on the outside and on and on? What is our relationship with the afterlife? You might think that is strange. Some people feel that it's important to have cemeteries where we bury our dead. Some people believe that our ancestors should be buried in the house with us. That's often an African ideology. So how do you design for cities and for homes, for neighborhoods, where the living and the dead are living together? It's not the past, it's current. Where I come from, we bury in the house. My parents are laid to rest in our house. So that's a design philosophy that would be reflected in our urban planning practices and in our architecture. All of those things give the way we plan a deeper sense and of meaning. And even just like how back in the past, every man inherited land in his village or his town, the chief will allocate land to members of it. So you weren't having to pay for land. It was something that was yours by right because you were part of the community. So you can see, if we are giving out land, how do you plan a town, a city, a village, or how do you do urban planning for an area that is growing if the policy is that everybody is entitled to free land? You can imagine the whole talk about affordable housing and all those issues will go away because we all have land. Then the next thing will be the policies about how do we build. Do I have to pay to have my house built? Or could that be community engagement, sweat equity, how Africa used to be built? When it's a young man's turn to building home, he calls family and friends, and we all help him to build. When it's the next person's turn, we do the same. To say thank you is a big party, feast, food, and drink. That's, if you think about that concept in contemporary planning, our cities will look and feel different because we would have true ownership. I actually know my neighbors because they all help me to build my house. Nobody will go around feeling like I don't know you, I can rob, steal, harm you in the name of money, because we actually all designed and built our community together. So it's a very, very different outlook on planning. But bringing that Afrocentric perspective, again, culture by culture. How the Luo in Kenya do it is different from how the Zulu or the Ndebele do it, or those in Idoma land do it, or those in Jamaica. But what are those philosophies? Bring them into the built environment, and we would create spaces that, just like people go to Egypt today and they are in awe, they will roam through Africa in awe of what we are designing, planning, building, and maintaining.